Bow down before my psycho power.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. The battle between Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 has started. Both of these games is now in a neck and neck battle, competing on social media, competing with trailers. It's going to be a lot to cover and keep up with, but I made my decision. I am going to prioritize Tekken news over Street Fighter. I have to. We have an interview here with Harada. This is the first time he's doing an interview talking about Tekken 8. Taking a little peek at it, I saw there were some things about Unreal Engine, Kazuya, so I'm just going to go through and start reading because there's a lot here. The headline says, Tekken 8, the exclusive first interview with Harada. A turning point is what this is called. Remember when I did the video on Heihachi and he was talking about how that character's death is the end? That character is a major turning point. Here he's saying the same thing again. A turning point is what Tekken 8 is. I will cut out some stuff that's either irrelevant or that is filler because there's a lot of reading here. A quote from Harada says, Tekken 7 kind of showcased a showdown of the two Mishimas, but it was Heihachi and his son Kazuya. Now we have kind of progressed down the timeline so that you're seeing the face-off again between father and son. You can see the chain effect where it then breaks and then forms into Tekken 8. We didn't just do that because it looked cool, but because there's actually a very strong element that tied to that. Harada explains this kind of chain motif has been seen in the past with Devil Jin. For example, this is because Jin's not only really conflicted because of his Mishima roots in the Bloodline, but also Devil Jin within. And now it kind of takes control over his life. So showing the chains breaking is kind of a way of showing Jin becoming free of all of these things. And just to add a little bit more onto this about the chain motif, there's a few other characters who has either Devil Jin markings or chains incorporated into their outfit. Armor King has chains incorporated into his outfit, although I don't think it has anything to do with the Devil Jin. Claudio, on the other hand, he has a chain around his arm, and underneath that he has Devil Jin markings. So I think there's more than one character where this shows, but Jin and also Kazuya in the past were characters who were able to overcome. Reading more of the news article, it says, but it's Tekken 8 transition to Unreal Engine 5 that has Harada's most excited. Unreal Engine 5 confirmed. To Harada, the entries that have done the most to push the console hardware has been the most successful. All the models and everything from Tekken 7 have been totally discarded. This is crazy. Leaving everything to be rebuilt in Unreal Engine 5 from the ground up. He points to the rain and sweat rolling down Jin and Kazuya's faces. He describes how it's different from its predecessor. Okay, two things I want to say. Going from Tekken Tag Tournament 2 to Tekken 7, they did the same thing. They got rid of their old engine, I think it was called Octane Engine, and they started using Unreal Engine 4, and they had a lot of issues there. So if they're doing that same thing again, going from Unreal Engine 4 to even though word on the street, Unreal Engine 4 is very, very similar to Unreal Engine 5. They're basically the same thing, it's just an upgrade. It's like when you go to the store and get a new phone. It's the same software, but just better. So I don't think we're going to run into any issues where they're struggling and this and that. But the part in here that has me excited, this is number 2. All the models and everything from Tekken 7 has been totally discarded. We saw the new Hell Sweep, we saw new run animations, we haven't seen sidestepping and all these different things, but you can tell a lot of the animations are redone. From this quote, it seems like everything is redone. And when you talk about characters having over 100 moves, that's a lot of work. And honestly, it would make sense why they took so long making this game, because you have to redo everything from scratch. Another quote from Harada says, Tekken 7 had something that appeared similar. That when a character fell down or during the battle, they would appear to be sweating, but that was just a parameter in the game in how it was really displayed. This was actually the first time that we're taking rain and outside effects and having the effects rolling down the character models. And not just that, but they fall down on the ground, their clothing get dirty as a result. So you can see the kind of result of the battle on the character models, Harada says. Now this is actually something that I've seen in the comment section. When I did my breakdown, someone in the comment section pointed out the fact that after Kazuya got knocked down, when he stood up, he was a lot more dirty, like there was dirt all over him. And this is kind of a good decision what Harada's doing, focusing on super realism, graphics, realistic lighting, rain, and all this stuff. I think this may possibly be the way that they can compete with Street Fighter 6, because I will be honest, right now Street Fighter 6 is flexing a lot of their game modes, World Tour, Battle Hub, the Extreme mode. They have a lot of different modes and game modes. Right now we haven't seen what Tekken has to offer in the game mode category, but right now it's flexing its superiority in physics, in graphics, and in realism. The first question from IGN. You've made a lot about Tekken 8 being on the next gen technology. Can you tell me what it's been like using Unreal Engine 5 for the first time? Harada says it's a very difficult question from a developer perspective, not just for us, but developers in general in the industry. It's different from the user's impression, where kind of like iPhone 4 was being used up until a certain date, and then okay, now iPhone 5 is out, it's awesome, it's brand new, everything works so much better. So kind of the same thing I just said. That's kind of the impression that your average user has, but in reality, it's not that case at all. Wow. It's a continuing process. Obviously, we didn't just start developing the game on EU5. EU5 was announced quite some time ago, but we haven't seen the game for it yet. So we started on EU4 and gradually started importing certain elements of the game over into EU5 and also confirming the results. This is what I thought they were going to do. So Unreal Engine 5 got announced super late and a lot of developers were upset about it. And I was saying either they already started working on Tekken 8 for Unreal Engine 4, which Harada says they did, and they aren't going to use Unreal Engine 5, but Harada made the tough decision and said, start porting everything over. We need Unreal Engine 5. That was a good call. The thing is that are important for a fighting game. The response time, those kind of things are stuff that we've been porting out into the game and then figuring out what to expect in areas as well. And we've been working closely with Epic to figure out how to optimize some of those processes for input. This is something that people may not really understand when you're talking about Tekken 7. But a lot of issues that the developers face, they try to fix it. But sometimes they will be working with another company who doesn't get back to them immediately and the problem lingers and gets worse. This time he says that they're on it. They're working very close with Epic, and that's good because we cannot have the same thing happen. IGN's next question says, as we head into Tekken 8, I'm wondering if you could share your perspective on where Jin and Kazuya are right now as characters. Harada says, Tekken's story has always been about the Mishima and their blood feud, and Tekken 7 showcased Heihachi Mishima and Kazuya and the showdown that took place there. And that finished with that installment. So now we're showing everyone a pinnacle of the story from the start of the campaign. But this is showing the remains of Mishima, the two of them, the only ones left. And then you got Jin Kazama and what he's trying to achieve. I want to make a video about Jin Kazama and what he's trying to achieve because his goals is big but also dark. It says, so whoever wins this is going to have a huge impact on the fate of the Mishima bloodline, which is a turning point for the franchise if you look at it that way. We've always, up until now, had all the different characters in the Mishima clan fighting each other in many storylines, and it's always been unclear how it would play out. But with Tekken 7, you saw the conclusion to some of those pieces. And now you're left with the main showcase between Jin and Kazama. Now tell me if I'm reaching with this, but it really sounds like he's doing his best not to say Heihachi, but at the same time, he's saying Heihachi is pretty much done for. Whether or not he's on the base roster is just a callback, that's yet to be seen, but it sounds like he's saying it without saying it. Harada says, I got a lot of feedback from the fans that they weren't happy about Jin's almost being the villain in Tekken 6, so people feel strongly one way or another about these two. IGN's next question says, how do you feel about the reaction to the rage system in Tekken 7, and will rage arts and rage drives be returning for this entry? This is a good question. So regarding rage arts or rage in general, there was a lot of backlash where before rage was implemented, Tekken didn't have anything like that. So people thought that 3D fighters should not have that kind of stuff. That the only way to win was being better than your opponent. And what was seen as a comeback mechanic was not very popular at first, but people found out about it. Fast forward to Tekken 7 and we have rage arts, rage drives, etc. And people had that same opinion, where they don't think it fit, but maybe 3 months after the game was out, people had the time to digest it and play enough matches. The opinion drastically changes to, hey, this is actually a good addition to the game. It makes it more exciting both to play and to watch. So from that perspective, we feel like it worked quite well for Tekken 7. Regarding Tekken 8, that's something that unfortunately we can't talk about. Oh my god. What's going to happen with the game mechanic today? Man, I thought Harada was going to spill the beans. On the topic of rage arts, rage drives is perfectly fine. That can make a return. But on the topic of rage arts, they need to make sure that they aren't super long. They need to make them look as cool as possible, but also they need to limit it to 1 per match. You should not be able to spam a rage art at the end of every single match. IGN says, will there be an arcade version before updated console versions like previous Tekken games, or will it go straight to console? The question everyone wants to know. Harada says, unfortunately, for the platforms, we can only talk about the ones that are announced right here. PS5, Xbox Series X, and Steam. What we can say is that this is the first time in history of the series that we announce a console version first. So that in itself is quite notable. And that's all we can say at this point. And even though Harada didn't say it's not coming to arcade first off, arcades only exist in Japan. He said Japan only makes up 3% of the player base. Also, in Japan, the arcades is pretty much dying. So that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know. So far in this interview, Harada is saying everything that I want to hear. I know it's still early, but a big question that's being asked by a lot of fans is how much customization can we expect? Something on the level of Tekken Tag Tournament 2, that kind of thing. Harada says, so that's an interesting topic because I was just joking that I should have never included customization. What? What is he saying? He said I was joking that I should have never included customization. Like you said, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 and even Tekken 7 had a lot of options. Even Tekken 7. But people still want more. Wait a minute, what is he saying? We brought up that the people who want more sometimes build their own mods, and customizations is even crazier. So it's just amazing how people are really into customizing their character. So this is kind of a nod to the modding community. Okay. I have a theory that fighters like Street Fighter and others usually just have skins because they saw what we have to do to develop customization and how immense it is on resources. And honestly, I think this is true. When you're talking about customizations, like everyone demands customization. But if you think about how they have to design every single outfit, simply having a pair of shoes that you change from white to black to red, that's so many different types of lighting and graphics and details you have to apply to that. And think about doing that for countless other items. The physics, you have to size that to each character. Think about that, sizing the same pair of shoes to 51 characters. That's a lot of time and effort. And I think the end result is worth it, but at a certain point, it's like, man. How satisfied were you with the guest characters in previous installments? Harada says, we were quite happy with the results. When we first announced guest characters, the fans were just shocked. both good and bad. It ultimately was a win because it did quite well. It was a win for fans because they got something brand new and different from the series, and it was a win for the IP owners because they saw what we made and they saw the reactions from the fans. They were really happy about the results of it. So I think everyone in general all around was quite happy with the guest characters and how they turned out in Tekken 7. Is this something you can see yourself doing again for Tekken 8? We're not talking about wanting the guest characters to hang around for Tekken 8, but in general, not even just Tekken, but in general, it's something that we are really happy we did because it was good to get that kind of motivation for working with some new material and also just connections that you made with other people in doing so. Did Harada just confirm that Akuma's not returning? I think he just did. We're not talking about wanting the guest characters to hang around for Tekken 8. That's confirming that's confirming Akuma's gone. I think how much people hate on that character sealed the deal. Harada says, I brought that up working with Odo-san from SK and how he had them on our panel at Comic-Con one year, that building those relationships were really cool and working with companies. It's obvious that's something we enjoy doing. Okay, whatever. That's crazy. I gotta read that again just to make sure my eyes is seeing this right. We're not talking about wanting the guest characters to hang around for Tekken 8, but in general, not even just Tekken, but in general, it's something that we are really happy we did because it's good to get that kind of motivation for working with some new. That's crazy. Akuma is not in Tekken 8. Confirmed. Kazuya killed him. Kazuya killed him. I wonder how they're going to tie that into the story. Will Kazuya actually kill him? Or will there be some, reason for his disappearance? Another question from IGN says, it seems like such a big moment. You called it a turning point in the story, and you can see that tornadoes and waves and ships are crashing to emphasize that. Can we expect expanded story mode, especially since that has become more common recently? So that almost falls into something else I'm not allowed to talk about. The more we talk, the more details we cannot touch. But I guess what I can say at this point is that Tekken 7 had a story mode and the game was really received well and sold I think 9 million copies. We're almost going on to 10 million copies soon. So I would say that something that was highly appreciated in previous installments isn't something that we're looking to shrink. Not just story mode, but any other mode or option. The fans expect that what was there is going to be better in sequels. We hope and we realize that we're trying to live up to those expectations. There's a lot of them being set on Tekken 7. You talk about game modes, you team battles, Tekken Force, expanded story, more characters showing up in the story. So that means those characters' voice actors is going to have to put on more of a performance. One request from the community quickly turns into 10 more things that they have to do to make that become a reality, right? We'll pick up where it says there's been a movement towards making fighting games more accessible. For example, Street Fighter 6 added easier commands so that people can play fighting games. I'm wondering what your take is on heading into Tekken 8, especially given that Tekken is such a technical series. Now, before I even read Harada's response, remember they had that patent that was going to teach people how to play the game. Harada was also talking about wanting to create a AI that correct misinputs. If you try to do a taunt jet upper or electric wind godfist and you miss timing, the AI would recognize what you're trying to do and correct it, and in the battle that would come out. Is that what he's gonna say here? Probably not, but let's read it. The first thing I should say is that in relation to a one-on-one game, a fighting game, not a multiplayer or a versus game. If you're just talking about on paper, of course, if you make the controls simpler, it should be more accessible. But that is just removing one step and you're still going to hit a brick wall eventually, because once you take away the execution or inputs or whatever you want to call it, you're still going to not be able to be better than your opponent. For example, there's Othello, which I think you call reversey in English. That's very accessible. There's no difficulty in placing them. It's all done down to strategy. But if someone's better than you, they're going to beat you anyways. You're still going to have those emotions of being happy when you win or sad when you lose. And I think this is a good point. I think what he's talking about is checkers. That's what I call it. but in checkers, it's very simple. You move your pieces in a very specific way, but just because it's simple does not mean you're just automatically gonna win. And that's the thing about Tekken. I know a lot of people say, like he said, you're gonna hit a brick wall eventually. Even with simpler inputs, you still have to time your attacks, you still have to block attacks, punish, wait your turn. There's a lot to know when talking about fighting games. The last one that I want to read in the news article says, you talk about how this story that's been almost 30 years running now. Have you imagined an ending to it? Do you have an ending in your head? Harada says, I actually had the ending kind of plotted out in '96. I was writing down the story and thinking, okay, we'll probably have one more, and after that one, this is how it's going to be wrapped up. But then I was making it, and I thought the games could be made really quickly. I think the quickest I ever made a new game is maybe in 6 months. So I thought if I could make a lot more installments at a higher price, then we'd be finished. But then it turned out development stretched, and then you just had longer periods between the games, and it took more time than I thought. In the meantime, you have all these staff joining in part way through who come up with new ideas for particular installments, which puts the ending off even further. So it just grew from there. So the ending, I didn't see it taking long to get there. I had one back then, but it gradually grown along with the series. And if there's an end, it'll be when I'm buried. Whoa! Whenever that is. Another thing that is kind of weird is how it works on your psyche. Once we got the Guinness for the longest running story, then you think, okay, well, I want to keep this. I don't want to let any other game take the record, so we have to make the story continue. This is something I was just talking about. If they reboot the franchise like everyone keeps saying, you're basically going to hand the title of longest running story to your rival, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. And you know how that's going to look. They're going to send out a tweet, they're going to get 100,000 likes, and they're going to be trending. You don't want to do that. What's really crazy about this though is when Harada says, if there's an end, it will be when I'm buried. I feel him. I feel it. This is why I like Harada. He keeps it real, and he says it how it is. And in this instant too, you see that he really loves what he's doing. Even though he gets a lot of trash from people being angry about stupid things on Twitter, you can see he really loves it. And he has no problem with stretching the game or incorporating new ideas from new people who join the team. At the end of the day, everyone just wants Tekken to be the best it can be. That's pretty much it for this long news article. Look at this. Look at all this reading. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I'm going to do my best to cut it down and shave off a lot of the access. But regardless, really good news article, really long news article. I just want to go through this, read it, and share some of these ideas with you guys. That's going to be it though. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And we still have the Harada's bar coming up, so stay tuned for that video. I'll see you next time, and bye bye.